Welcome, witches.
I'm Candi.
And I'm Jen.
We're the Cornfield Coven.
All right. Before we get started with today, we just want to call out some of our awesome supporters. We appreciate you guys so much. Align Chiropractic and Wellness. I'm shouting them out again. They threw us into their newsletter, which is awesome. Glitz and Glamour Salon Spa, Honey and Vinegar Tattoos. The amount of talent in that building is awesome. So go see James, Isaiah, Aaron, or Amanda for your tattoo needs. The Nook, Reader's Cup, and Books on Main. All indie bookstore places with used books, coffee to read, to drink with your books, all that kind of stuff. Raygun, which is an amazing Midwest-based t-shirt company. They have awesome stuff. Midwest Blessed Boutique, Calico and Company, Stummy and Hack Tax Services, and Aquatics and Exotics, which is where we got our 2 pet axolotls, and they are awesome.
They're so cute. I want to give a shout out just to a couple of businesses in McGregor, Iowa. I would like to give a shout out to Katie at By the Spoonful. Keeps us caffeinated, keeps us bobud.
Yes.
Is that a word? Bobud?
Bobud. It is now.
Yes, amazing. Food, drinks, charcuterie. Second, I would like to give Camille Sweet over at the Left Bank a big shout out and thank you. Her and her wife, Jen, really hit the streets last weekend and passed out flyers for me and just have been 2 amazing supporters and cheerleaders. And third, Paper Moon in McGregor. The ladies and cats there are quite amazing. But most of all, today's episode of Wisconsin Death Trip, I purchased my book there by Michael Leasy. I hope I said that right. But yeah, they've got great historical books and spooky books and amazingness.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's get into it.
All right. So today's episode podcast reading is about the Wisconsin Death Trip. So I moved to Wisconsin about 5 years ago, and I thought this was going to be just a quiet, simple farm town state funness, but it's not. When I started working, I had a coworker bring to me the book Wisconsin Death Trip, and they were like, you have to look through this. You like spooky, you like uniqueness. Anyways, this book suckered me in. It's, how do I explain this? The book is about a town, Black River Falls. I'll just jump right into it. It's the late 19th century. The town of Black River Falls becomes the backdrop of one of the most haunting periods in American history. Between the 1890s and the 1900s, the town appeared to be under a curse.
Ooh,
I
love a good curse.
Right? The local economy, I think I'm going to pause. The thing that lured me in is, for the longest time, and I blame American Horror Story, the TV show, the whole Roanoke, the town that disappeared.
That was my favorite historical mystery growing up.
Right?
But now it's sort of been solved.
Yes.
Essentially.
Yes.
But we actually went to the Outer Banks and went to Roanoke Island. It was amazing.
Oh my gosh. It's like right there with the Bermuda Triangle for me. It's like I want to touch the dirt. So that's when Wisconsin Death Trip was brought to my attention, it hit those same strings for me. So like I really fell in love.
Maybe just in case our listeners don't know what Roanoke Island is, it was one of the first settlements in what is now the United States. And I won't get into the entire story, but a lot of their support had to leave the settlement and go back to England. There was a war that needed to be, fought in the name of the king. So a lot of their support left, and they were supposed to be back like 8 months later. They didn't end up coming back until like 2 years later, I want to say. And the entire settlement was gone without a trace. And the only thing that was left was a carving in a tree, and it was the word Croatoan. So that's the mystery we're referring to when we talk about Roanoke Island. Sorry.
No, you're fine. I was like, and then there's the American Horror Story version.
Yes.
That just...
And Stephen King's Storm of the Century.
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. So, okay, where am I? Oh, so in the 1900s, the town appeared to be cursed. The local economy collapsed, farms failed, families went hungry, and a wave of madness swept through the community. I mean, I guess, madness would hit when you get desperate.
Yeah, desperation.
Hungry.
Breeds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Newspapers reported a bizarre parade of horrors, arson, suicide, murder, and unexplainable acts of violence. Children vanished without explanation. One woman, compelled by mysterious voices, burned her family's home to the ground. Another woman kindly shot her husband before turning herself in. Her expressions were void of no emotion. I have questions. What was her husband like?
And this is early 1900s.
Violence is never condoned, but, she probably had her reason. Photographer Charles Van Schaik captured these dark moments, documenting the haunted faces, mourning portraits, and spooky stares of a town unraveling. These photos, combined with the raw, unfiltered newspaper clippings of that time, laid the foundation for the book Wisconsin Death Trip, a chilling chronicle of despair. And this book was published in 1973 by historian, that's a new word. Historian Michael Lisi. It wasn't just a tragedy, it was a strange rhythm of stories, but truth. Asylums, jails, and undertakers were just purely overwhelmed. I mean, between the chaos in the streets, people killing each other, strange deaths. I mean, I don't blame them for wanting...
The town was cursed?
Yeah. Each week, the Black River Falls newspaper seemed to deliver a fresh dose of macabre. Historians tried coming up with explanations. Economic collapse, disease, isolation, brutal winters. But no single answer fits. Instead, Wisconsin Death Trip remains a portrait of rural America at its most fragile. It is a ghost story told in real headlines and frozen photographs. A window into time where hope withered and the American dream faded, and something darker took its place. If you get a hold of this book, it is published by University of New Mexico Press. I purchased mine at Paper Moon in McGregor, Iowa.
Papermoonbooksonline.com.
Yes. We frequent that often. But I highly recommend, if you can get your hands on a copy of the book, on YouTube, there are multiple videos of the Wisconsin Death Trip if you Google it. But there is one, and it's split into, I believe, 3 parts. And this video goes with the book, like from beginning to end. Okay. But it is the soundtrack that hooks me every time. The breaking windows, the creaking doors. It is the corniest soundtrack. It sounds like a low-budget film, and it made me love it even more. Black River Falls in Jackson County in the beginning started off very promising. Logging money was coming in, the rail lines and the factories were booming. There was a church around every corner. It's like Starbucks these days. And the schools were full of children. People arrived to build a future and forgot what they left behind. There was land to clear, trees to cut, and families to support. One could truly make something of a life here. Then the bottom dropped out. The timber boom dropped faster than anyone expected. Mills shut down, jobs disappeared, and stores boarded up their windows one by one.
So this is like the 1890s when the bottom dropped
Yeah.
out. Okay.
I mean, and if you think about it, this is the only sound of communication that they have is word of mouth and letters. So you don't know what's going on in the outside world. And a lot of the times the outside world doesn't know what's going on in Black River Falls.
Yeah.
So like calling for help, like I need help like financially, or I need help where to sell, my timber. It took forever. And I think they couldn't get the support they needed.
It kind of sounds like a breeding ground again for the Wendigo.
Yes.
The desperation and starvation and how important community was, and if they weren't utilizing that.
Well, and then when your community is going crazy and they start it gets creepy. So farmers couldn't keep up with the soaring prices with everything. Winter arrived, and that didn't help anything to ease the suffering. Winter even arrived earlier this year and lingered long. It was a bitter, bone-deep cold. It made life even harder. Roads turned to ice, supplies dwindled, and illness crept in like smoke. Thyroid, influenza, tuberculosis. I wish you guys could see my spelling. It's like I'm in preschool and the teacher asked me to sound it out to spell it. I mean, yeah.
I always look up the phonetic, how to pronounce things, and then I make up my own phonetic. Because, I understand their phonetic, but it takes me a second, and I'm like, okay, but this is the word ski, not, the
it's
way
like
they
reading
write
Harry
it.
Potter again. Yeah. It's like when you learn that Hermione's name is Hermione, not Hermomo. When my kids and I first read it, hemorrhoid. I think I called her hemorrhoid once. That's horrible. Anyways, let's see. Tuberculosis took hold. Entire families were trapped in one-room homes. Small homes back then. So, too poor to leave and too sick to fight back. By the early 1890s, Black River Falls wasn't thriving. It was sinking between economic collapse, disease, and isolation. Communities pressed on in a strange and unsettling wave. Depression wasn't just in the air. It seeped into the bedrooms, barns, and schoolyards. Then suddenly, a suicide here, a disappearance there, and soon people couldn't help but notice the change. There was something different in the way people looked at one another. Shorter conversations, longer, lingering stares. Even buildings seemed to sag under the pain. Roofs sagged, paint peeled, hinges broke off. But churches continued to open their doors, but their sermons were increasingly somber, talking about cleansing and trials. This town was past distress. It was unraveling thread by thread. By the time signs of a crack in the town appeared, no one was surprised. It began with a sore throat, perhaps a slight fever. Nothing to alarm anyone, but within days, kids couldn't breathe, gasping for breath, necks swelling, and grotesquely their skin taking on a gray hue color. So, in one of the videos I was watching on Death Trip on YouTube, they showed, in the book, they show images of the children. Oh, I mean, I couldn't imagine now with the medicine we have and the technology we have and the information we have. But could you imagine back then not having the tools, like
having
as
anything.
a parent?
I mean, yeah, you get a cold and it's like that could be it.
Oh.
Ugh.
So they dubbed this disease the Strangler. Basically, it choked its victims from the inside out. Vaccines didn't work and doctors were baffled on what to do.
And this is tuberculosis, right? Yeah.
They decided to quarantine schools. Schools shut their doors, churches grew silent, and funeral bells tolled daily, ringing out the sound of tragedy. That totally reminded me of the Hunger Games. Like at the end of each day when they did the chimes of who was gone. Yes,
it sounds a lot like the bubonic plague too, which was, hundreds of years before this, but
ugh. Fear turned to desperation. Parents burned the bedding and travelers were turned away. Makeshift isolation wards sprang up in barns, yet the disease continued to reign its relentless, going from house to house. By the 1890s, the worst had passed, but every household had been affected by the sickness. the scars remained. They did have a doctor, a gentleman who was a doctor's aide, I should say. He rode out on a horse, and it took a while, but he came back with 1 vial to test, and it did help with the disease, but they didn't have enough for everybody. So it was kind of like, who deserves to get better type of a thing.
Oh, I don't want to get into that because that's going to be terrible on a whole different level.
So this sickness and the scars, it left an effect. A town already teetering on economic hardship was falling apart. The economic downtown shattered of this once thriving town, dragging it down into the type of hell from which it would be harder to recover. It didn't hit like a wave. It emerged as a slow leak. In March 1893, now this is how I was introduced to Wisconsin Death Trip. When Jen and Louise introduced me to Wisconsin Death Trip, Mary, this gallery here on the cover of the book, Mary Sweeney, rumored to be was battling a major cocaine thirst and began smashing windows.
Goodness.
She would break windows of banks, schools, and shops. Anything but glass. She didn't run or hide. She simply went from building to building with a rock in one hand and a wild look in her eyes and cackling. When the sheriff caught
How did she develop a cocaine addiction, though, in this, like, desperate... I mean, I know that drugs run rampant, you know, even more so in underprivileged places, but I don't...
It just cracked me up.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So
I'm going to let it go.
When the sheriff finally caught up with her, she smiled and said she enjoyed the sound it made. They tried committing her, but she escaped and kept going and hopping trains to other towns, breaking more and more windows. By the end of the year, she had become a legend. She said she was possessed. Others said she had simply had enough. She just went nuts. Eventually, she was sent to a mental asylum and never seen again. I would love to eventually hit this up again down the road.
Yeah.
And see if we could find anything more on Mary. I mean, could you imagine just losing, like, you finally just lose your shit and you're just like, I just don't care anymore.
I'm just going to break windows because
it brings me joy.
Beautiful music to my ears.
It brings me joy.
So I mean, I would take a different route, but because that sounds awful to me. I don't,
right?
You know?
So then there was Pauline, 19 years old, quiet, and living on a small family farm outside of town. One day she walked away and disappeared. A week later, they found her waist deep in a frozen creek.
Like it was frozen around her?
Mm-hmm. Her eyes fixed on something no one else could see. She didn't speak for 3 years. She was still alive. How? I don't know. And when she finally did speak, she uttered only scripture and repeated the same 3 references, a continuous loop day and night. Do you know what that reminded me of? The first I Know What You Did Last Summer. When they go to find Billy's sister.
Yeah.
And she's a mute in that little house and she's just repeating the same thing over. That's what I totally envisioned is this poor girl. So then the next incident was a 60-year-old woman convinced she had cancer and set herself on fire. Then there was a farmer who couldn't pay his debts, so he set his barn on fire and stood in the snow until it collapsed. In another disturbing incident, a young boy poured gasoline across the kitchen floor, lit a match, and watched as his siblings ran screaming from the house to the yard. Fire is a thing here. And I want to know what encourages them. Why fire?
Well, I mean...
I guess back then...
Fire doesn't strike me as quite as outlandish as being found in a creek, in a frozen pond. But, you know, because people, was there insurance? Was he burning it down to get insurance?
In 1890s, was there insurance?
I don't know.
That's something to look up. Yeah. Another story was Mrs. John Larson, tormented by visions of devils and worsened mental illness, walked her 3 children to the edge of Lake St. Croix one quiet morning and drowned them one by one in still cold waters. When John Larson came home and found his children missing, He launched a desperate search. Why not for his wife? He must have known she was crazy. Anyways, I would have went right for the kids too, but he scoured the lake shore, calling their names and praying for anything but the worst. Eventually, he recovered the bodies of 2 of his children. The third was never found. As it made the papers, more stories passed in whispers. There's stories of the man who laughed all the way and all the time and uncontrollably, even at his wife's funeral. Or the story of...
Wait, his wife died too?
Yeah.
She killed them, and then how did she kill herself?
I think she drowned. It doesn't say in there how she died.
She did like a Virginia Woolf thing and
filled
her pockets with rocks.
Oh, the lady with the minivan who just put the... but he lost it and just laughed. Like, I would too.
There's something like sinister and insidious in this town. Like, I agree with them. This place is cursed. This is awful.
There's a story of a teacher who locked her students inside the schoolhouse, then vanished to later be found a few days later, barefoot in the church basement, softly singing old songs in an unrecognizable language.
Yeah, that's some Blair Witch shit. And
right?
I am like,
right?
I just got goosebumps. That, like, whoo! Nope.
What makes these stories all the more disturbing was how ordinary the individuals were. They were neighbors, customers, everyday people. There was no curse physically stamped on their forehead. They looked normal, but their eyes showed it. So that's like you and I hanging out, and then the next day, I'm just drooling and staring at the wall, and then I light a match. Like,
I'd be like, did you have a bad day, Candi? Do we need to go get a coffee?
Do you need a Snickers? You're not yourself. The town kept trying to name it. They were trying to figure out what was going on. What was causing it? Such as alcohol, poverty, or spiritual decay. But every time an explanation was reached, another story surfaced that was too strange to ignore. By 1900, one out of 472 inhabitants in Jackson County was certified as insane.
Whoa.
That part of Wisconsin wasn't just rural, it was rural. It had vast stretches of forest, long dirt roads that lead to nothingness, and an uncanny stillness where ancient I don't even know what word I wrote there, where shit lingered. Beliefs carried over from ships traveling from Germany, Norway, and Sweden persisted of spirits in the shadows, witches in the woods, curses that infiltrated bloodlines seeping in like fruit. People rarely discussed these forces directly, but they were unmistakably present. There were charms above doorways and salt scattered on thresholds and candles left burning in empty rooms. Now, I might be weird, but I put salt in my doorway and I put black tourmaline in my door sills to keep out negative energy. So
I'm with you on that. This is starting to give off vibes of like, what is it? Is it Sunnydale or Sunnyvale from Buffy?
Yes!
Where like,
oh my god, if Angel pops up, I'm in.
I didn't watch Buffy until a few years ago.
Oh my god.
I know, it was, I think it was on a channel we didn't get when I was a kid.
Oh.
But when I watched it, I just kept thinking like, what is wrong with the parents in the town? There's like a 50% death rate of the children in this town and nobody addresses it ever.
Maybe that's what sparked my anger, was that and Buffy. Because I watched every episode. But when watching the last season of Stranger Things,
same thing.
I don't want to give spoilers, but like the whole, it was an earthquake. Bullshit. It was
Yeah.
not an earthquake. Like, how did nobody... When did the earth rumble? Why were you Anyways. So, it was reflected... Okay, where did I leave? Oh, the charms and everything. It was reflected on how people responded to this misfortune. Not merely with restraint, but with fear. And a lot of stuff, I believe, curses and evil energy, it feeds off fear. Like, that's what makes it grow.
Yeah. As
if something unseen had turned against them. By the 1890s, supernaturalists had taken root on the community.
Oh yeah.
Seances, trances, and messages from the dead scribbled by candlelight became common. Mediums traveled towns like salesmen. I like to think of them as like ambulance chasers. And they're like,
Yes.
oh, we're going here.
Yep.
They were going services door to door, and they could soothe people's hearts that doctors couldn't. And places like Black River Falls, cold, crumpling with unresolved pain, made it perfect sense for people believed in something bigger at work. Otherwise, all the suffering would have been for meaninglessness. That was not a word. Would have been meaningless. This is where belief turns on itself. Some say the land was cursed, that the town had been built on something old, angry, a burial site, a place never meant to be settled on.
Yep.
Whispers of sin, insisting the town people had brought this upon themselves by greed, pride, and neglect. I can see that.
Yeah.
A few leaned hard into the church, preaching louder and praying harder. But even that began to twist. Sermons turned into rants. Preachers warned of demons, hells, and fires below the floorboards. And then there was the sightings. There was a big black dog, taller than any man seen, stalking the same stretch of road again and again. Lights flickered deep in the forest where no one lived. Children talked to figures that weren't really there, sometimes kindly, sometimes not. Some would believe whatever this was would not affect or touch the children, but it did. And people stopped calling it mischief and started calling it something else. One boy, 11, maybe he was 12, walked into a schoolhouse with a pocket full of matches and a jug of lamp oil. He carefully poured along the baseboards while his classmates recited their lessons. He lit the lamp oil and stepped outside and waited. No one noticed. How do you not smell it? How do you not? Anyways, no one noticed until the smoke hit. When they finally pulled him away from the fire, he didn't cry or scream. He simply stared calm and just waiting for something to burn. One little girl stabbed her older brother in the arm with a carving knife. Later, she said she thought he was someone else, someone hiding under his skin. The boy survived. Then the girl fell silent for weeks, didn't talk, didn't say anything. Then there was the 13-year-old John Anderson and his 10-year-old brother, who fled their home and murdered a remote farmer and took his land as theirs, and lived there undisturbed until the farmer that they had killed, the brother, arrived and confronted the boys. The little brother broke and confessed everything. John bolted and ran. In time, he was captured and sentenced to life in prison. Where was his mom or dad?
Like nobody, was wondering where he was. And like they were just living in this house and they're like, yeah, bro's dead upstairs.
13 and 10 years old.
This town is messed up.
Yeah, it kept happening. Vandalism, fires, sudden acts of violence. These weren't tantrums or accidents. These were far more focused. This was dangerous. It followed by silence and no answers. Teachers began walking out mid-lessons, packed up their things, and never returned.
At least somebody smart.
Get the hell out. One moment schools were open, the next they weren't. Parents tried to keep their children in line. Some just stopped trying, and wills weren't around. And some weren't around long enough to attempt it. One family lost 3 children in a span of a year. Illness killing 2, and the third vanished after breakfast, only to be found weeks later, drowned in the icy water. The mother never spoke again. I wouldn't speak, but what is with the icy water? What is calling the kids to use fire? What is calling them to go into the water? It's like the elements are turning against them. It felt like the next generation was being pulled under before they even had a chance to grow. Though the sickness of the town had seeped into their skin, all they could do was mirror it back. People stopped calling it a curse, but it had to be something older, stronger. The children were being used, puppeted. In the end, people just locked their doors and hoped they wouldn't be next. Doctors tried informing everyone about hygiene and rest and to stay healthy.
Well, yes, that
Preachers,
is probably important,
yeah.
but I don't think it explains everything.
Preachers talked about prayer and repent louder and more desperately than before. Judges passed out sentences like sandbags to a flood. Short terms, long terms, it did not matter. Jails filled up. Then came the asylum. The institution groaned under the amount of weight. Yet the cracks continued to spread. People left. They left quietly. Some departed in wagons and some just left by foot. without saying a word. Meanwhile, others stayed behind, unraveled right where they were. By the late 1890s, Black River Falls was no longer a town in the true sense. It had become a noose, a collection of houses. It hadn't burned down. Oh, that hadn't burned down. And people who hadn't completely broken. Post office still operated and the church still rang its bells, but yet both seemed rather demolished. Stories that once headlined the newspaper were now printed at the bottom of the page. House fires, illnesses, and children found wandering the woods with no recollection of how they got there were no longer top news. So it just became common. It's kind of like the school shootings now. It's like, it's horrible. It's like, yes. Other towns started to whisper that Black River Falls was cursed. Not out loud, not in print, but it lingered in the air, in the smoke. Nobody wanted to move there. Nobody wished to discuss it. There was an undeniable weight to it. Whatever had swept over the town never announced its departure. It left no note behind. It simply disappeared from conversations, quietly. Today, Black River Falls of Jackson County is very different. The river still flows through the town, as it always has. When walking through the streets, you can almost forget what happened here. Almost. There is still a lingering feel. Black River Falls survived. New buildings have been built, streets have been paved, and shops have come to town. Kids ride their bikes through town with no worries, but stories still linger. The dates, the names, and records still remain in the archives. It's hard to categorize the book Wisconsin Death Trip. Is it a history? Is it poetry? Is it photojournalism? There's something about the way the images and the text are combined. The author of the book Wisconsin Death Trip, Michael Lessie, has always insisted Wisconsin Death Trip was not just a portrait of a particular town, but a rather psyche of a group of people who lived at a certain time and place. It was the state of the whole region, the author reminds us. So, again, there is the book. I highly suggest it. The pictures are creepy, amazing, and really make you question things. And then there's the YouTube video that I highly just suggest to go with it. Michael Lessie, he came across these images and newspaper clippings and did a lot of work. And I'm really thankful he did it because,
yeah,
like I said, when I moved here years ago, I thought this is going to be a boring town. It's going to be quiet. Moving from the West Coast, busy, always going, keep Portland weird. I loved it. And I moved here and I thought, oh, it's going to be so quiet. There is more weird in the Midwest than on the West Coast.
That's
than I
why
could
we're doing this, man.
ever have expected. Yes. But thank you for my long
to read that book.
Super rant about this.
Going to
that's
slide
yours.
This away
that's
from
yours.
you. I'm stealing Candy's book right now.
But yeah, so you can get your copy of this book at the Paper Moon or the New Mexico Press. But yeah, I highly suggest it. It's weird. It's amazing. Like,
yeah, very interesting. I would be interested to kind of dig into, has anyone done any more research on this to find out like about the land?
So there is a YouTube video of this gal, and I apologize that I didn't grab her name. She walked through Black River Falls about, I think it's 8 years ago, and wow, where did that Midwest come from? About 8 years ago, she did a walk through the town and just kind of going through like the different locations, and it was really cool. But she didn't go deep into the woods. She didn't go to the lakes. She didn't go to the cemeteries.
Yeah.
She didn't do that stuff. So that would be kind of fun to like do a part 2 on this, but go there and
yeah. Well, I'm just wondering too, historically, is there some kind of burial ground or something under there? Because I'm 100% in on the curse here. It's not a question to me that it's cursed.
To me, it's do you remember that episode of Supernatural with Sam and Dean, and it was the development of homes?
Yes.
And the spiders and the bugs and all of that. And it was because all of those homes, they got the land cheap because they believed it to be cursed ground and the guy didn't care.
It was hallowed ground and they weren't supposed to develop it.
And
but,
and that makes me wonder, like they had said, Was it Native American land? Was
exactly.
And so, yeah, that'd be something more. But yeah, well, thanks for listening to probably the longest rant of my life. And
well, that's what we do.
That's
I
what
mean,
we do.
Every episode is just a rant because we like to rant about these things.
So don't drink the water in Black River Falls and stay uncursed.
Yeah, stay out of icy creeks. Don't start fires. Don't be violent.
Yes.
Unexpectedly or otherwise, I suppose. But anyway, thank you guys, and tune in next time for more spooky shit from the Midwest.
Have a good day.
Bye, witches.